Hey everyone, welcome back to Radio Free America with Bill Parsons and Bill Mason. I want to start out by apologizing. I know it's been a good 6 or 8 weeks. I had some major surgery that took me kind of off the board for a while. So hopefully we're back to get back into it again. It will be on a regular basis. So with that being said, Bill, I know we had a whole bunch of topics we talked about earlier today. And I know yours was back to the finance end of things, right? Again. So, because yeah, with all the shiny objects going on, they're going to slip this continuing resolution uh,
Exactly.
under the carpet and or under the door and get it in. There's so much shenanigans. It's just so hard to keep track of what's really
Yeah,
important. I mean, in many ways, all of it's important to some degree, but some things are more important than others. And of course, one of the biggest threats this country faces is economic disaster.
exactly. You know, uh, I was totally, and I do not agree with Trump on this big, perfect, beautiful bill. I mean, it's not a big, perfect, beautiful bill. As
I
usual,
agree.
they play the shenanigans in Washington. They got the tax cuts and stuff in there that we definitely need. But
Right.
all the other garbage, it's basically the last quarter of Biden administration's budget is what it is. Totally
Right.
against it. Don't like it. Don't agree with it. I have to agree with the Freedom Caucus that this was it was put through, and then all of a sudden all hell breaks loose with everything else. So shiny objects, and
Right.
of course we have a press, and the mainstream press doesn't listen to us. But if they did, they would. What I would tell them to do is go right back to the finances and butcher the Republican Party on that because they did not cut the spending. They said they did, but as you know how they do accounting in Washington,
Oh, right,
you,
right, right. It's not really a cut. It's
no,
just a
it's
lack
like
of growth in the spending.
where instead of a $10 million budget that you asked for, and you got an $8 billion budget last year, you asked for 10, we're going to give you 9, but we cut $1 billion. That's how. That's how.
Right. Instead
That's
of actually adding the billion, they added
Yeah.
it.
So in essence, they add money to it, but they just didn't give as much as they asked for. So that's part of the game in Washington. So that I'm pretty upset with Trump over that. The other thing is, I'm just so aggravated with the Republican Party right now. Just very aggravated. They're no better than the Democrats. At least with the Democrats, when they go after somebody, they go after them. The
Yeah,
Republicans,
I agree.
yeah, want to sit there. So we have all this garbage going on, spewing about, oh, the rich got to pay their fair share. The rich got to pay their fair share. So here's something I want to ask people: who the hell's the rich? Define rich.
Right. They can't. Just like anything else, they always
Yeah,
throw around these terms,
yeah,
but they
but
can't
nobody.
define the terms, and nobody
Yeah,
ever asks them to define
no,
the
and
terms.
nobody ever challenges them who's rich. So, for example, somebody bought a house down here in Florida in like 1980 and paid 50,000 for it. That
Right.
house is now worth probably 750,000. Are they rich? Are they poor? Are they middle class? So that's the question. So the other thing is when I get sick and tired of all this frickin' class warfare and all the garbage that the Democrats throw at us and the Republicans to a point too.
Oh, yeah.
The top 1% of the taxpayers, the top 1% of the taxpayers in this country pay 40% of the taxes. Half of the country pays no taxes. Now you're going to say, oh, no, Bill, you're wrong. You're wrong. You're wrong because they take money out of my paycheck. No, half of the country gets their money back.
Sure.
And
They get an income tax refund.
well, and if you're getting a refund, you're a moron because you're giving the government interest-free money for an entire year when you
Yeah.
could be using that money. So the goal is not to get a refund or get very little. But here's the thing,
Right.
and this is something the Republicans passed: child tax credit. So I had an individual 8 or 9 years ago apply for a loan, made 25,000 a year. On her tax return, she got a $12,000 return, and I'm like, "How did you get that?" And I know how. Well, child tax credit. I said, well, what'd you do with that money? Well, we deserved a vacation. So we took a vacation and it was everything I could to keep my mouth shut. So
Sure.
that right there, that individual on 25,000 probably paid into the system maybe 2,000, maybe
Sure.
2,500, but got
Right. So they're
12,000.
incentivized for the more kids they have.
Yeah, so you got
And they get a certain
12,000. Yeah.
dollar. Right. So she gets like 3,000 a kid. She's got 4 kids, probably
Yeah.
no father in the picture anywhere,
No, no,
probably
no, there
different
wasn't.
fathers for each of them. And
No.
she gets 12,000. So when I send in my big check because I'm an entrepreneur and I run a business, they just basically hand the 10 or 12,000 I wrote to her.
The American taxpayer is some of the most ignorant people in the United States. When we have a group of people out there that have such a hatred and are such brainwashed and are so mentally deranged that they hate a man and they hate a group of people they've never met, that they're willing to condone billions of dollars going everywhere and being wasted. And they just sit there and are protesting against stopping this waste and misappropriation of
Right,
money.
right. They hate the guy who exposed the graft and the corruption and the waste
Yeah.
more than the people who stole the money from them and wasted the money.
Yeah, it's just beyond my comprehension. So what do we do in this tax bill? The rhinos are coming up. Well, maybe we should put a tax increase in there for the rich. So again, my question is, where the hell did they come up with these numbers? Where did Biden come up with the
Right,
400?
it was that
Yeah,
$400,000. Right.
where did that come up from? And they have other things in there in the tax code. I'm like, where they come up with these numbers? It's
You
just.
and I both know they pull them out of a hat, especially when they're talking in public. They pull them out of a hat.
But I am adamantly opposed to this bill going through. I mean, I want the tax cuts, but I'm
Right.
adamantly opposed to it. It's nothing more than Biden 101.
Right. Trump's plan requires three or four pieces to be in place. The tariffs, they need to, I'm with Kevin O'Leary, tax China 400% and just be done with it, you know, and just that blows him out of the water, and then deal with everybody else. He needs the tax cuts, right? He
Yeah.
needs deregulation at the highest level. He needs to deregulate as much as he can, him, Congress, whoever. And so those are the three really important components. They all have to come together. I know one of the people that Donald Trump's not very happy with or doesn't like very much is Thomas Massey out of Kentucky, because Thomas Massey holds the line. He goes, I'm not supporting this bill. This is, like you said, it's Joe Biden version 2 with some Republican, stuff like a tax cut in it. But that's it. The spending doesn't ever stop. I mean, you and I talked about this earlier today. It's just amazing. We live in a world that is so corrupt, so backwards. I mean, it's you know, women can be men can be women, men can give birth. Transgender story hour. I mean, it's incredible. The criminals, but the Bible really kind of lays this out. It says in the end times, good will be looked upon as evil, and evil will be looked upon as good.
Men will want to be women and women will want to be men. That's in
Right.
there.
I mean, so the Bible was very clear that in the end times, everything would be upside down, because and that's, I guess, where I have to take my solace, because you and I were talking about this earlier today, is, man, it gets very frustrating and very exasperating to watch this level of corruption and theft and degradation of all of our cultural institutions, our government institutions, our schools, colleges. I mean, everything just decaying around us. And it doesn't have to be that way. It's they've designed it for this to happen. They're actively involved in the destruction of their own nation. And man, it can get exhausting fighting this every day. But that's what we have to do, because in the end, as a Christian, we know how the story ends.
You know, if I was to give a speech, I would open up with this. I would say, I want everybody in here. I'm going to pass an offering plate. I want everybody to put $10 in there. Everybody puts $10 in there. Then I'm going to bring in somebody out of the crowd and I'm just going to give it all to them and say, go spend it as you want. Here you go. It's free.
Right. Exactly. It's free money, right?
That is an example of what is going on at the government level. And the prime example of that is Susan Abrams. For those of you that don't know,
Stacey Abrams,
I'm
yeah,
sorry,
from out of,
Stacey
out of
Abrams. Yeah,
Georgia, yeah, out of
she ran
Atlanta.
for governor, never conceded losing. She's a mouthpiece for the Democratic Party. She's basically just, yeah, it just part of. She's a political monster, political
Right.
creature.
Oh, she's just,
Never,
come on. These people are gangsters. It's all they are.
yeah,
They're
never
criminals
had a
and
job.
thugs.
She opens
they're
up.
just pillaging they're
Yeah,
pillaging the treasury.
she opens up an account at a bank under an LLC, nonprofit organization, puts $100 in it. gets $2 billion deposited to that account.
Yeah.
Do a little digging. Guess where this money was going, Bill? It's going to a town in Georgia of 200 people. And the money supposedly is going to be to buy appliances so people can cut down using electricity.
You could, if there were 200 people in this town and you had $2 billion. Now, I'm no math genius,
Yeah.
but they could all get a shitload of money.
Yeah. Well, that's not where it's going.
Oh no, of course not.
And,
They
and,
bought they
and
bought
that,
a couple they bought a couple refrigerators and stoves and
if
whatever,
that,
and
if
the
that
rest of
even
it
gets,
got funneled
well,
right into some slush
well,
fund.
but this is how it works. They go and they buy those stove and refrigerators for $300,000 or $400,000.
Right.
But then their money's untraceable after that.
You could
That
equip if you had 200 households in this town, you could equip every household with the finest appliances and have, oh, I don't know, a billion and three quarters left over.
well, the money. We all know the money wasn't going there. Money's going right back to Stacey Abrams gets a big salary to run that nonprofit
Right. She gets a
organization,
chunk, so she doesn't rat it out. It goes back to Act
and so
Blue.
does
It
everybody
goes back.
else.
Yep, they all get a piece of the action.
Can't, all these NGOs are nothing more than money laundering organizations. But
Sure they are.
I just pulled her out because that just came out. But
Right,
it,
right,
it
right. Well,
and
this
it's
is
not,
that's just one example of hundreds, thousands.
and it's on both parties. Both parties are greasy. I have lost all faith in the Republican Party. I really have. Here we go. We have 75 million people that have given that party a mandate, and they're doing nothing. Nothing. I mean,
You hear nothing out of Congress. No
no.
hearings. No. I mean, it's just incredible. I
Yeah.
mean, and I'll tell you, I'm very frustrated with Pam Bondi. I'm very frustrated with Kash Patel. I understand. Being in law enforcement for 30 years, I know an investigation takes some time, right? You got to get your ducks in a row. You got everything right. You don't want to do this and then not do it right. But okay, for God's sakes, at least be doing a weekly briefing. Where are we
Yep.
at? And I just saw today, I think my wife read it to me. I forget, I think Senator Ron Johnson is confirming that FBI, CIA, three-letter agencies are currently destroying RFK. They're destroying Robert Kennedy assassination files, Epstein files, Kennedy assassination files, Trump assassination files, 9/11 files. They're shredding shit as fast as they can. And
And
Ron Johnson, through an
nothing's being
economic
done.
budget. That's what I mean. So when you have every branch of government, and I got to argue at this point, we may not actually have the Supreme Court. I think all three of Trump's nominees, Samuel Alito in that midnight order that got literally at midnight, he basically said this is unprecedented. This is a joke. What the Supreme Court is currently doing. But think about this: the three nominees. I mean, Donald Trump lost a lot of political points by standing up for Brett Kavanaugh. He could have jettisoned that piece of shit and put somebody else in his place, and it couldn't have been any worse.
Yeah.
So Amy Coney Barrett has fucked him. Kavanaugh and now Gorsuch. I mean, they're the only two justices that are up there that are worth a rat's ass are Alito and Thomas. That's it.
Yep. Because we know Roberts is
Yeah.
more of a liberal than he is anything.
Amy Coney Barrett is almost just like Sandra Day O'Connor.
Yeah.
She gets appointed by a Republican and becomes a freaking Democrat when she gets in there. What the hell happens to these people?
They live in the bubble, man. They live in a bubble. Everybody's all upset in Washington, D.C. because people are losing their jobs. But I didn't see any of these people weeping when 10,000 pipeline workers lost their job when Biden got elected and he shut down the pipeline. I didn't see
Yeah,
people. I didn't see any of these people weeping when they were forcing people out of jobs and out of the military because they wouldn't get the shot.
right. Yeah, right. 2020, 2021, 2022, you lose your damn job when you were a doctor, a nurse, a pilot in the military. I mean, all kinds of places. We were subjected to a totalitarian government, which somehow we stood around and let happen. People lost their jobs. Nobody walked. You didn't see. There was no news stories about that. Nobody was bitching and crying about that, were they? It's only when the deep staters And you and I both talked about this today. When those deep staters start getting their budgets cut, they lose their jobs, they lose their homes, they use their honeypots. Then they come after you, right? Like they're coming after Pete Hegseth. Every day they're going to come after him.
Oh yeah, and it's always undisclosed sources.
Oh, right, right. Somebody deep inside the State Department, somebody deep inside the Pentagon, inside the CIA, unnamed source, right? Yeah. So Hillary Clinton typed up another dossier and sent it out. And she's back in the news again because she's wanting to stay relevant,
Yeah.
right? She's back at her old tricks. Well, if you're doing misinformation, there should be civil and maybe even criminal penalties for it. And who gets to decide what's disinformation?
Yeah.
Right? You do, right?
Yeah, that's right, because they know best. Yeah, the whole money thing, they've gotten the public's eye off of the 36 trillion and growing, the continued out of control spending of the government, the more bullshit regulations that they haven't cut back anything. We have no hearings on anything. It's just the status quo. The uniparty will keep things under wraps as long as they can. So all this stuff that they do, all these delaying, all these court
Well,
actions.
this is right. This is all to get us to the midterms.
That's right. Every day is one day closer to the midterms, and then we're
And then
starting.
all of those representatives and senators or whatever who are so worthless now just become twice as worthless.
Yeah, because they think that they need to go along with what the Democrats do to get elected.
See,
And
I just don't understand it, man. I mean, the Republican Party, like you and I, if you and I are disgusted with them, who isn't?
yeah, yep.
So that brand is no good anymore. The Republican brand it's not a good brand. Okay. It's like, when's the last time you drank a 7 Up?
Long time.
Right. But Sprite, right? Sprite, 7 Up, same drink basically, right? But 7 Up's just not a viable brand anymore. It hangs on because I think one of the big, like Coke owns it or something, right?
Yeah,
The
yeah,
Republican brand is no good anymore, but the MAGA brand is solid. And
yeah.
I don't understand why these Republicans don't have the guts, the balls, the wisdom, the awareness to think,
Yeah. Well,
I need to become more like Trump.
I think a lot of it is you have to follow the money. You just don't know what they owe their soul to or what these people have on them. All kinds of, drug use, sexual use, all kinds of stuff that goes on, what they're being blackmailed with, what they're going to be told. If you go forward with this, we're going to go forward with that. It's just a sewer, an absolute sewer.
Right.
And what,
It is. You're right. I've called it that for a long time. It's not a swamp. It's a sewer.
yeah. And what
It's a
needs to
fucking cesspit.
The American voter is so apathetic and so out of tune with what goes on, and that's how these people keep getting elected.
Right. You and I've talked about this many times. The primary is where it's at.
Yep.
If you don't get the right person if you don't vote for the right person in the primary and get a candidate that's going to be a change agent, then
Yeah.
it's nothing changes. They'll get
Yeah.
up there, they will stand up on stage back in their hometowns and back in their states and say all the stuff you want them to say, all the stuff you want to hear. And then they go to Washington and do exactly what they want to do. But the voter who was at the meeting, at the town hall, who heard all this nonsense, there's a disconnect, right? They promise you the moon. They go to Washington, D.C., do none of it, and they're not held accountable for it. And they come back in 4 years or 2 years or whatever and beg for your vote again, say they'll do all this. I'm going to, right? And then we vote for them. They win, and we don't hold them accountable again. So at the end of the day, we are to blame for the situation we're in.
Oh yeah. And the funny thing about it is the people on the right talk about the Democrats dividing and conquering. The Republicans do the same thing.
Sure, they do.
You're a liberal. You're this, you're that. Both parties are doing it. So if they keep us divided and arguing amongst ourselves, you cannot have a debate with a lot of people on the left. I mean, I
No,
have
you can't. You can't. No, you can't. You can't. I don't think you can debate with any of them. I mean, if you find the rare Democrat or liberal that you can actually sit down and have a civil conversation without being called a name or threatened,
yeah.
you've found a unicorn.
Yeah, yeah, it is unbelievable. So I kind of get on Twitter and I look at some of the responses from people just to keep an eye on what's going on. There is a lot of discontent out there with the mega people with what's going on with the lack of action, because they'll put these news stories on there about Stacey Abrams or Letitia James or whatever, whatever.
Yeah,
And the comments are, doesn't matter, nothing's going to happen, doesn't matter.
right.
going to happen.
Why,
Doesn't
you know,
matter,
why isn't she in handcuffs? Why hasn't she been
uh,
had her photograph taken? Why hasn't she been booked into the jail?
yeah,
Right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
We just
And I
when we
can
watch
tell
it
you,
over and over and over and over again, and it does at a certain point, you know, even I know this is the last time Donald Trump. Here's the other thing. I don't want to get off on this, but Trump needs to stop talking about a third term.
all
That's
that does
that
is
feeds into his whole dictator thing.
it's a distraction. It's
Yeah.
all it is a distraction. I wish he would quit that, and I wish he would quit the nickname stuff. What he needs to do is he needs to have he's the CEO, he's the head coach. He needs to call his people in, and he needs to have meetings with the leadership of the Senate and the House, and a few of those rhinos, and he needs to just lay the law down to them. This is how it's going to be. If you don't do this, we will primary you. And he needs to have the head of the RNC in there, and they need to have an introduction to life speech, and and this is how it's going to be. Pam
I wish
Bondi,
I.
you know,
What is she doing? Right? Why don't we should hear from her at least once every week, Monday or Friday. I don't care when. Monday, Wednesday, or Friday. Beginning of the week, end of the week, middle of the week. Every single week, we need a DOJ update. Her,
yep,
Cash Patel, you know,
Bongino.
yeah, Dan Bongino, John Radcliffe from the CIA, Tulsi Gabbard. We need to know what's going on. They need to keep because we haven't seen the Epstein list. Why?
Oh,
Right. Okay. Maybe there is a legitimate reason. I don't know, but they need to be out there saying, "Listen, we promise you, but there are certain ducks we have to get in a row first." Okay, but they're not. They're just pretending it's not there.
yeah.
And when you, like you said, when you see all these Democrats, I just got a little piece a little bit ago. Andrew Cuomo is being referred to the Justice Department for criminal charges, or probably stemming out of COVID, I would imagine. Uh, but once again, oh, why don't we see him perp walked and fingerprinted and photographed? You know, and they're going to elect that guy mayor of New York City. I'm telling
Oh, he'll get it hands down.
you. Yeah.
So the Democrats who are supposedly for women's rights and all this are going to elect a guy that's basically going to be a convicted felon or should be, um, basically a bully, in a
Well, he's a damn
sexual
gangster.
harasser, and
Yeah.
he should be in jail for what he did during COVID with the senior citizens.
Right. Well,
That
so should Gretchen Whitmer and the
yeah
governor of Pennsylvania, the ex former governor of Pennsylvania, the governor of Murphy out of New Jersey. There's 4 or 5 of them that should be in prison
yeah
for what they did. Right. And
but,
why is Anthony Fauci still walking around a free man?
yeah. Yeah, good question. You know why? I mean, the list just goes on and on, Bill. It's frustrating, and if like you said, if we're frustrated, there's a lot of people and I can tell it by reading, like the comments on Twitter and the newscasts that go out. People are just like, you know what? Our vote means nothing.
I mean, I know it's only been less than 100 days. I know that's not an enormous amount of time, but when we see the Supreme Court making these unprecedented, ridiculous decisions at midnight to usurp the Article 2 authorities of the president. If I was him, I would ignore these judges and just do what I wanted to do. Now I know that would result in impeachment, and he might actually get impeached this time with all the freaking Republicans. I mean, the only reason they're in power is because of him, right? But when you see the Supreme Court and you see all these district courts and all these lawsuits, and Bill Clinton deported 12 million illegal aliens. Barack
Yeah,
Obama did somewhere around 10 million. The Bushes did millions. Not in most cases, very few, if any, lawsuits at all. They literally think we're going to have a hearing for every MS-13 gang member that we need to deport, or a Trinidad Wagwa gang member we need to deport. They really that they expect us to have a hearing for every one of them and prove they're a gang member.
they broke the law when they just came across the border.
Right. So okay, then I don't know immigration law well enough. I wish I did. Wish I could talk to Josh Hammer and ask him. But for God's sakes, whatever the most expedient way is, get them the hell out of this country. But it's incredible, and I think that when you stack up the Supreme Court and the lawsuits and the absolute, they're just dragging him every step of the way. And then we don't see people arrested for the crimes that we know they have all committed. Hillary Clinton should be in prison. Fauci should be in prison. Letitia James should be being photographed and perp walked, right? Stacey
Oh,
Abrams. I mean, just the list is
oh,
endless.
the
And we
lady
watch
down,
this and we're like,
yeah,
you're
the
saying
lady
that.
down in Atlanta, that Fanny lady.
Right, absolutely, sure. Danny Willis.
Yeah.
I mean, they got her, she purged herself. Her lover went up to Congress and lied to Congress.
Yep. And then
And we see
they got
nothing.
phone records of collusion between the White House and all these.
And all these prosecutors, absolutely. Right.
Yeah.
So,
Nothing's
and
being
then on top of that, we had a president that everyone knew was mentally incompetent. We don't even know who was running the hell. We have no idea who was running the White House for at least two or three of those years. We have no idea.
Yeah.
Really bad happened. We have no idea who would have actually been making the decisions to launch nuclear bombs.
Yeah.
Why is Mark Milley not in jail?
Oh yeah, exactly.
Right, and that's it. If I see this meme once a day, I see it 10 times a day. It's got the guy from the comedian, and he's screaming at Pam Bondi, for God's sakes, arrest somebody.
Yeah.
And I think that's it. And I guess the only solace I take is I know that this is a temporary world. I know it's a fallen world, and I know we're fighting a battle that in the end we win. But man, it does get to be very, very frustrating when the people you think are on your side are doing some of the. I mean, Lisa Murkowski, Alaska. How the hell did that happen? Well, I know how it happened, ranked choice voting, and they stole the damn election. But
Yep.
I mean, this woman is an absolute turd.
Yep.
And out of Alaska.
I
And
know.
did you see, on another note, did you see the story that today? I guess it broke yesterday. They stopped a group of Mexican nationals with 130,000 rounds of ammo coming from
Yeah.
Utah into Colorado. Now, I
Yeah.
wonder what that was for.
Yeah. Yeah. Mainstream media is not covering it though.
Well, of course they're not. They're not
Yeah.
covering the fact that two MS-13 gang members from El Salvador murdered a woman in Maryland, and they just found her body buried. She was murdered on April 17th. There are going to be two more Maryland men. They're going to be just wrongfully accused, right?
Yeah. When's the last time a congressman or senator went over to Gaza to check on our American citizen over there and ask for his release?
When's the last time any one of them went to one of these women's families who was murdered by one of these
Right.
pieces of garbage and
Right.
said, hey, I'm sorry, the border, or just
Yeah.
how are you doing? Anything. We're going to make sure you're taken care of. No, no, no. There's no media in that. So we fly to El Salvador, and he should be charged with the Logan Act, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Well,
And
the other ones are going down. Yeah. There's a bunch more going down now.
oh, of course they are. It's photo shoot time. If I was the president of El Salvador, I would not let them in the prison. You're not coming in. He's
Yeah.
had his little moment of fame. He's staying here. You go back to DC. That's what I would do if I was president of El Salvador. You do not run my country.
Yeah.
So I would charge with the Logan Act. And I don't understand. Mike Johnson is approving these trips. We're footing the bill. But you and I both, you know what I think of Mike Johnson. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess
Well,
once again,
we were funding the Justice Department with everything they were doing to Trump
oh, I know.
and continued funding him.
Right, and we pay for our own destruction.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
It is incredible, and I don't want this show to be a total downer but it does get a little depressing. I mean, I think there are some good things. I mean, the message that came out of the White House this Easter was fantastic. Compare
Yeah.
it to 1 year ago
What
when we
last
had
year? Versus, yeah.
last year was Trans Identification Day.
Oh, and
Right?
then they had transgender men that had women's breasts and was topless. Remember that?
Oh, absolutely. It was nudity going on in the White House lawn and everything else. Right. So if anything, okay, at least we do a president. I think his ordeal over the 4 years really changed who he is
Yeah.
in many ways. So, I mean, at least we have that. More and more people are going to church and turning to God. Um, the Pope passed away. Here's an opportunity, maybe, hopefully, they'll appoint a good
Okay,
Pope.
here's one for you,
But
Bill. Here's one for you. He was, in my opinion, I understand he's the Pope, and
still, he was still worthless. I respect the
yeah,
office and I
I
respect him.
respect the office, but he was nothing more than a Marxist,
Absolutely.
and did not like the United States, hated Trump, talked against Trump, was all for climate change, was all for all the communist manifesto that's out there, and then we're probably going to
Yeah.
offend a lot of Catholics, but it is what it is. It is the truth.
Yeah. And the truth
Now,
is,
now here's my projection, just my wild projection. Already they're floating around this Catholic. I don't know if he's a priest or whatever priest or in Africa. Now I don't know what his race is, but I would almost bet that the next pope that we see will be of a different race.
so he'll be someone of color. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I can see that because I think more than ever now, Catholic Church has always been a political institution. Okay. I think more than ever, this Pope is going to be appointed for political reasons,
Yeah.
whoever it becomes.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm only hoping that Rome is sensing the fact that, you got Poland, you got Hungary, you got Italy, even Germany is now is realizing probably way too late, but the error of their ways. So a lot of the world is making this 180 shift. I don't know, maybe the Catholic, because how do I put this the right way? The Pope is the leader of almost 2 million people, right? He's the
It's
figurehead,
1.6 billion. Yeah.
right? It's just a huge, the Catholic Church has a huge following. So in one way, he is very important because he sets the tone for the church, all the Catholics that are out there. In another way, it doesn't matter at all. I mean, you know what I mean? It's a kind of a balance. But I mean, I think but you go back to the 80s, the Pope, Ronald Reagan, and Margaret Thatcher brought communism to their knees. And the Pope was part of that,
Yeah.
right? So the Pope does have an incredible amount of power. And this Pope had totally went in, it jumped on board with the homosexuality, the transgenderism, the just people migrating around the world to wherever they wanted to go.
Oh,
And
yeah,
I
he was
don't know if this
totally,
is serious or not, but they were actually talking about taking this guy who's in the prison, the Maryland man, and they were going to make him a saint. So that tells you how insane things had gotten. I'm hoping that the Catholic, I guess whoever the leadership of the Catholic Church makes some better choices and picks a pope that's a little more conservative, but we'll see.
yeah, well, 1.6 billion people, that's a huge following.
Yes, I mean I guess I don't know if this is true or not, but if not the largest religion in the world, right behind Islam. I mean,
Yeah.
they're neck and neck, and we know where Islam stands on most of this, right? I mean, except for a handful.
Yeah, they don't like
So
Western culture.
I mean, I know the Pope's death is kind of captured the entire news cycle. Don't really understand that much. Okay, we all know who he was. We all know what he was. He's dead. They're going to get together in 2 weeks and do the white smoke, black smoke thing. Come up with somebody, put him in office, and if they don't like him, they'll just do a coup on him like they did the Benedict.
Yeah. Well, I kind of look at the news cycle kind of like what they did with Lady Di. It was the same thing. I was thinking about that today because it's more in the morning. So I get up, I turn on the weather channel. I want to see what's going on in, weather-wise, because I got, friends and relatives all over the country.
All over, yeah, right, sure.
And then I go to, shoot, what's her name? Oh, I just having a moment here. Well, shoot, it checks the overseas markets because that's usually a warm up for what's going to happen here.
Right, because they're basically at the end of it.
Yeah, so I usually check that. And then I'll go and watch the news. And other than the Weather Channel, everything was the Pope. I'm like, oh, it's a news story. I get it. They need to cover it. But then it was like half hour of this stuff, and I'm just
Right. Yeah, it's like when Princess Diana died. You can't beat that shit in the ground for so
yeah.
long, and then you got to let's talk
And
about
that's
something
what it
else.
was. Lady die, lady die, lady die. So it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah,
I
and it's
mean,
going to dominate the news cycle. And
well,
and the thing is, the problem with that is as that story runs cover, all these other things that are more important, really more important in many
yeah,
ways, are slipping
yeah,
under the radar.
more shiny things.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, I don't know. I just don't. I realize how frustrating all this can be, but we still got to fight the good fight. We got to
Yeah.
keep educating people, informing people, running for political office, voting for the right candidates, showing up in off-season elections, right? I mean, I've got enough. This will be I think the sixth or seventh time my school district is trying to get another increase, right? And I got to get it's an election in May, so they're hoping that 50 people show up, right? And they can slip this thing under. And you got to keep on top of this stuff. You and I as a voter do actually have a great deal of power, but when we don't exercise it by just sitting back and letting the old system keep running the way it was, it's not going to work for us anymore. It never really did work, but we're now reaping the fruits of sitting back and not doing anything.
Well, we're to the point right now that the spigot has to be turned off on the spending. It has to stop, and neither party really has the kahunas to do it. And there's no political will in Washington to do it. And it's not just at the federal level; it's the state and city level too.
Sure.
But the spending has got to stop. We cannot continue doing what we're doing. And, we're in such a greedy society. If it doesn't affect me today, I'm not going to worry about it type of
Right.
mentality. And we're to the point, well, I mean, we're to that point that, if we don't stop the spending, then there'll be, this country will cease to exist as we know it.
And I know what people think. They've heard this before, and it's like the boy who cried wolf. We keep talking about this, but it never happens. But that's not how when when economies collapse, it happens very rapidly, right? It's weird. We can see it coming, but then when it actually starts, the dominoes fall fast.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. And, it's just, I shake my head. I just shake my head. Obviously I'm a numbers person and I know where to go to get the look for the right numbers. And I'll tell you, 90% of the numbers that they spew to us out of Washington are lies,
Oh my
but
God!
but
No kidding! No
but they're
kidding!
but they're never challenged. We
Right.
we you know they're not challenged by their fellow Congress people. They're not challenged by the media. They're not challenged by the business leaders, the Chamber of Commerce, the
The chamber. You and I both know the Chamber of
uh,
Commerce is 100% in bed with this whole globalist plan.
oh yeah, absolutely. But and I'm tired of this World Economic Forum that needs to be disbanded. We need to pull out of that.
Well,
What
yeah, Klaus Schwab actually stepped down today,
yeah.
which means they will probably appoint. This is my bet, but I think they'll appoint Yuval Noah Harari as his successor, and that guy is scary.
Oh, that whole movement is scary.
Yes.
It wouldn't surprise me if they bring Soros in on that group.
Well, at some level, he probably is involved.
Yeah.
With either the money or the support or something, but he's certainly involved. Somebody with that kind of influence and cash, he's a player. He's probably, I don't know this for sure, but I can't even imagine it. He's got to be at Davos every year when they have their big meeting, you know.
Oh, and
So
the press makes such a big deal out of that, and all these people come flying in on their corporate jets, and that's okay. That's okay. Those people don't need to, that's okay for they get a pass on everything.
they fly in thousands of sex
Yeah.
workers
Yeah.
because it's all they're up there doing.
Yeah.
You know, it's just incredible. It So you got the World Economic Forum. You got George. Why is George Soros not in jail?
His
And his
son,
whole family,
his
right?
son's been worse.
Right. So you put them in jail. They've tried to overthrow this country. They can prove they bankrolled many of these violent movements. You seize all their assets. He's already won it in several countries. Why is it we can't facilitate his being
Be-
deported there? Or
because he owns probably 70% of the politicians in Washington, especially on the right, on the left, but on the right, he owns a lot of them too.
No, I agree. It's like, being from Ohio, I had high hopes for Jim Jordan to be really somebody who would go and shake things up, and he's worthless.
Yeah, he's
Mike Turner, I know personally, worthless.
windbag,
You
just
know,
windbag. They talk big and that's
that's
it.
all they are. Yeah. And so, I mean, it's just disappointing. And Ohio is as solid red as you're going to just about get. California, I mean, Florida, Ohio, Iowa, place like that. I mean, we are blood red. And I guess the one good thing we got is ain't nobody beating Vivek Ramaswamy. He will be our next governor. I just pray to God his actions matches his rhetoric.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
And then
Yep.
with you guys, I mean, Florida, I mean, is DeSantis' wife going to run to try to keep that whole legacy
Well,
intact? Or?
they've got what's his name? The guy that represents down in the Naples, Fort Myers area. He's a man of color.
Byron Donalds?
Yeah. Did you know his wife is Caucasian?
No, I did not.
Yeah,
I like Byron Donalds. I think he's a super sharp guy, super
yeah.
smart guy.
He
I
would be
don't
good.
know. Yeah, I think he'd be a good governor. I don't know. I don't know if he's got the that's the right way of saying this. He's and please I do. I mean, I like him a lot, and I think he'd be a great governor. And maybe I hope he becomes the governor there. I don't know that. I'm not being from there. You're going to know more about the other players in that field than him. But yeah, he would be a super. Nice, because I think he would be a nice smooth transition from DeSantis. Not much
Yeah,
would change.
I think he would be excellent. But what we got going on down here is the legislature has got a lot of rhinos in it, and they're trying to take all the power away from the governor. And DeSantis is fighting them. The latest one, let's see. They were trying to do the illegal alien thing was to go through the Department of Agriculture, and,
Right.
and he got that canned. And I'm just trying to think of the latest one that they were trying to do. It was totally ridiculous.
And this amazingly enough, Florida sounds very much like another big red state.
Texas.
Same shit going on there.
Yep.
I mean, it's a deep red state, heavily Republican, and the Republicans that actually run the House are nothing but Democrats in disguise.
Yep. Yep. So our Speaker of the House down here is a rhino, and him and DeSantis are all the time butting heads. And yeah, so that's what's going on down here. I mean, we're a red state. We should stay a red state. But if you remember when DeSantis got elected the first time, we
It
almost
was,
would
yeah.
have convicted
You
Trump.
almost, yeah, Andrew Gillum, who's in prison.
Yeah.
I mean, isn't it amazing? I mean, how often we as a country and so Florida goes, so Ohio goes, so Texas goes the country, really. How many times we have narrowly missed that metaphorical bullet?
Well, I know.
I mean,
Yep.
guy, crack addict, cocaine using, thieving piece of shit just about became your governor.
Yeah.
Yeah, and had Trump not went down there and stumped for DeSantis, he would have probably lost.
Yeah. Yep.
Right? In
Yep.
Ohio, we've got the milk toast worthless governor we currently have. I mean, he is worthless.
Yeah.
Right? How is it that everybody in this 80% of the state can be Republican and we end up with these turds in our Senate, in our House, and in our governor's mansions?
Good old boy network. Good old boy.
Well, DeWine has been the only job DeWine's ever held in his life has been a political one. He's been a prosecutor, he's been a senator, he's been an AG, he's been the governor. Yeah,
Congressman.
yeah, everything, but actually holding a real job.
Yeah.
And Texas the same way. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of the governor down there. I think they could do a lot better. If I would have been Donald Trump, I would have appointed Ken Paxton as the Attorney General for the United States, not Pam Bondi.
Yeah.
Ken Paxton's he's a fighter, buddy.
He's running against Cornyn in
Right.
a primary, and he'll win. He'll beat Cornyn.
Oh, thank God. Once again, how in the hell do people like Thune and Cornyn get elected in the states they get elected in? It just makes no sense. Utah, how do they elect these worthless people?
I know.
What happened? It's got to be money. It's like you said, good old boy network and money.
Yep.
Isn't
Yeah,
it amazing that to run for the position of a senator or a representative or the governor of a state, you need tens of millions of dollars
isn't it amazing for a job
because
that pays
you
for a job that pays 275,000 or
right
maybe 175,000?
or less,
Yeah,
right? And
yeah,
and tens and tens of millions of dollars just so people will recognize your name.
yeah, yeah. And tell me that those donors don't want favors.
Well, sure they do. If anybody's chunking in 10 million bucks for your campaign, they want something in return. They didn't do that because it's just out of the goodness of their heart,
Right.
right? The dude who sends in 75 bucks, he's doing it because he actually believes,
Yeah.
right? But
Yep.
that ain't going to get you elected unless you already have a platform. Donald Trump was already famous. Everybody knew who he was. He already had recognition. He didn't
Yep.
need that, right?
No.
But the rest of us, if we want to go to Washington or state houses or whatever and make a difference, unless you've already held some public position or you're already well known, you got to raise millions of dollars just to get people to know just to know your damn name,
Yeah.
not even what you stand for.
Yep. And none of that is ever examined. I mean,
Well,
it's
something's wrong with that system, Bill. Average American should be able to run for any political office in this country as long as they meet the requirements.
yeah.
But money should not be the barrier. We've
Yep.
got to get this money out of this because as long as there's big money in it, just like you said, somebody donates millions and millions of dollars. On the back end of that, they want something in return.
Yep. Always. There's always strings attached.
Sure, there is. And it may seem like they're your best buddy and they don't want anything and they're just doing it for the republic. But when the rubber hits the road or things get a little dicey, they're going to call in their favors.
It happens all the time.
Sure,
That's
and that's why I think we have the system we have now. Unfortunately, the founders never envisioned this.
well, the founders never meant to these positions to be a career.
Right. I mean, there's so much. If they were to come back, the system, how we have just completely adulterated the system and bastardized it, they wouldn't recognize it at all. They would literally go, "This is exactly what we warned you about."
Yeah. Yeah, it is. All these government agencies that we have, when they start appointing all these heads of these divisions, I'm like, why do we have all these divisions of government? My God.
Right. I mean, departments you and I don't even we as well informed as we are. There are departments we don't even know exist. I guarantee it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, by far.
And let's sit down and actually study some kind of a spreadsheet. And on the topic of the founders, we are next year, not this July 4th, but next July 4th is the 250th anniversary of this nation's founding. So, I thank God Donald Trump's at least going to be president for that, because can you imagine the abomination that would have been if a Democrat would be in charge? That would have been disgusting, gut wrenching, sickening what they would have done. Trump will celebrate it the right way. But I
But
think when go ahead.
you and I have the same age. We can give a real good parallelization from what it was in 1976 versus what it's going to be this.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
in 1976, they had pop bottles. We had all the time
Oh, everything was a label
commercials.
with the flag. Yeah. Oh,
Everything
yeah.
was bicentennial, bicentennial, bicentennial. We're not hearing anything.
And we're only 18 months away. And
Yeah.
that's when you're doing marketing and ramping stuff up, you're 18 months, 24 months out,
Hmm.
right? So, I mean, you're going to wonder. And not only was all that stuff there, but the country itself still loved America.
Yeah.
Our politicians, by and large, still loved America.
Yeah. Yeah. The president at that time, I believe, was Ford.
Yes, yeah, right. He was
Yeah, it was
because it was
Ford.
right
And
after that. Because Carter then took over and put us into the
yeah,
into the same. That's a
yeah,
different story. But
yeah. But even Hollywood came out, was a big supporter of that. I mean, you everywhere you looked was bicentennial.
yeah,
Had little stickers you put on your bumper, and the schools were talking about bison. Hell, we've got people that they don't even know half. They can't name you three presidents. They can't tell you when the Declaration of Independence was signed. Can't tell you who we fought in the Revolutionary War.
oh, I know. I see it all the time in the man on the street stuff.
Oh yeah, it's embarrassing. Can't tell you the oceans that border the United States. Can't tell you one country that borders the United States.
Well, it's yeah. Oh man, it's so embarrassing. It's amazing. And I guess the thing is, They're not embarrassed by the fact they're that ignorant.
Oh, they laugh about it. So, here's the thing, Bill. When we went to school, they were teaching Latin and foreign languages.
Oh, I remember I had Mrs. Kaufman for Latin.
Yeah, now what they're teaching is remedial reading at the high school. They're still remedial reading. That right there it gives you the answer of everything.
Well, right. The communists realized they could never beat them. They couldn't win over America or even most of Europe with their philosophy of this class warfare. That didn't pan because the middle class lived quite well. They weren't disenfranchised. They were not disenchanted with the system. It was working for them effectively. So what they realized, Gramsci realized when he was in prison in Italy, when Mussolini put him there, we got to march through their institutions, the churches, the colleges, the schools, and we just take one at a time. And it was a
Yep.
long-term plan. And you and I and all of us now are living in the fruition of that plan.
Yep. The trifecta.
Right. And we're trying now to beat back a hydra-headed monster. But I just wanted to mention that April 18th, a couple days ago, was the 250th anniversary of Paul Revere's ride. I remember having to memorize this poem as a kid in school. I made my kids memorize it. We homeschooled them. Listen, my children, and you shall hear the midnight ride of Paul Revere on
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
18th of April in 75. Hardly a man is yet alive, right? We
Yep.
had to memorize that poem. And there were really three riders that went out that day.
There
Revere,
was.
Wade, right? Revere, Wade, and Prescott. I have literally stood on the spot in Massachusetts where Revere was captured. Right, there's a big monument to that there where he was captured, and it was Dawes that made it all the way, or Prescott that made it all the way. Dawes evaded the British regulars, but got knocked off his horse and had to walk back to Lexington. So it was Prescott that actually got all the way to Concord and the one if by land and two if by sea, the whole deal. Right. So it was Prescott that actually ended up delivering the message nationwide, but Revere started the ride. So I just think every show I'd like to discuss another founding father
Yeah.
or,
Yeah.
celebrate the upcoming 250th, birthday of America, the greatest country in the history of mankind.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yep. That'd be
Right.
good.
So that's what I hope to do. In a more positive note, stay informed, stay educated, stay active. You got to get out there. We've got to get involved. And and if that means we have to put pressure on the Trump administration, that's what we got to do. But we need to see arrests. We need to hear from Pam Bondi. We need, and this is something I want. I know Donald Trump doesn't listen to this, and I'm sure nobody in his sphere does. But why have Kyle Seraphin, Steve Friend, Garrett O'Boyle, and the other FBI whistleblowers, why have they not been publicly reinstated to their jobs, given back pay, and vindicated? They're the ones
Yeah.
that came out and blew the whistle on the FBI investigating mom and dad going to school board meetings. They blew the whistle on all these things. Steve
Yeah.
Friend's the one who stood up to his bosses at the Miami field office and said, why are we sending SWAT teams to arrest 70-year-old men and women?
Yeah.
These guys put their life on the line. They put their careers on the line, and the shit the FBI's done to them for 3 years is criminal.
Yeah.
I don't understand why Cash Patel and Dan Bongino, just those guys up there, hand in their badge publicly so everybody can see it. Oh, yeah, and they're all supervisors now, and we're going to give them back pay for what we did to them.
Yeah.
Why has that not happened?
And pay their legal expenses.
Everything.
Yeah.
Whole as they can ever make them.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what's sickening. Why would anybody ever come out again and be a whistleblower, knowing that when we do win the election, they still don't get vindicated?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And there's a group of them in the IRS too that should be reinstated.
Absolutely. Right. Because that's good. We're going to tell you, and if I was Donald Trump, when the court tells me I can't hire people or I can't fire people or I would just completely ignore them. Nationwide injunctions by lower courts have no foundation at
They
all
don't.
in
They
law
don't.
of any kind.
They don't.
Ignore them and force the Supreme Court to do something about it.
Yep. Yeah. Yep.
This
No,
is
they
what
don't.
I would do. Donald Trump's 80 years old. He can't run again. Balls to the wall, buddy.
Yep.
about what anything else, because I think we have a moment in time to save America, and this is the moment. If we don't do it now, it's not doable.
I'll wholeheartedly agree with that. I mean, we're to the tipping point. There's just,
Right.
there's too many things out there that if they aren't addressed and corrected, we're to the tipping point.
Right. I mean, we've got Russia, and we got Iran, and we got North Korea. Right. We got China we have to deal with. We've got the Hamas and the Israeli situation. We've got our own economic woes. We've got our own internal issues. We've got essentially elected officials in our government trying to overthrow our government.
Yeah.
So we've got enough problems, and they're going to require a strong, powerful medicine that's going to be bitter and not easy to swallow. But if we don't do it now, there is no doing it, and
Yeah.
won't be able to save the body politic.
That's absolutely right. Absolutely right.
So with that, we made it an hour. I'm proud of myself after the major surgery I had. I'm
Yeah.
feeling pretty good today, so hopefully I keep going on the upswing, and we will get back together on Wednesday. Bill, how's that?
Absolutely.
All right, Patriots, stay safe
All
out there. See you soon. Bye.
right. Good night.